Yeah, Sean, did Jared prove anything to you today?
I think he did a nice job, Bill. I thought he improved on last week. I think you really saw a guy that stepped in and he did what he could. I thought he made some plays. Thought he saw the field well, like I was mentioning. But he did a good job today.
He's your Is he your quarterback?
Yeah, he's a quarterback right now.
Before we get to the content, I just wanted to remind you guys, we're giving away 3 PlayStation 5 digital editions to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. Whether you're an old subscriber or a new subscriber, if you sub and turn on my notifications, you have entered for a chance to win a PS5. If you want additional entries, make sure you're following us on Twitter and on Instagram, especially because people that follow me on Instagram and Twitter will get their takes featured in the content. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Earlier today, we provided you guys a update in terms of the Matthew Stafford situation, and we even plugged in the LA Rams as a dark horse contender to win the Matthew Stafford sweepstake. Now, this move is very on brand for the LA Rams. The LA Rams historically have been very aggressive when it comes to acquiring any target that they wanted, and that dates all the way back to the time that they actually were able to acquire Jared Goff in the NFL draft. If you go back to the 2016 NFL draft, the Los Angeles Rams had to trade up to the number 1 overall spot, which was owned by the Tennessee Titans at the time, in order to get Jared Goff to begin with. To do this, they gave up 2 first-round picks in the 2016 and 2017 NFL draft, 2 second-round picks in 2016, 2 third-round picks in 2016 and 2017, and in return, they were given a 4th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, and the number 1 overall pick in the 2016 NFL draft to draft Jared Goff. Meanwhile, let's take a look at what ended up happening with the Tennessee Titans. They got the capital to successfully build the football team that they needed. One of those picks even ended up becoming Derrick Henry, which was a staple of their franchise. Another one of those picks turned into Corey Davis, which was a top 5 pick. And the 3rd-round pick that was gifted to them ended up turning into Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis are remarkable pieces for the Tennessee Titans, and they were literally able to select the face of their offense in Derrick Henry as a result of this Jared Goff trade. And when you put everything together, all things considered, Jared Goff had a fairly nice career for the LA Rams. Yet he was definitely not in the same tier of quarterback as Mahomes or Deshaun Watson or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, but he did show promise, and statistically, he was excellent in Sean McVay's jet motion offense, being good enough to even get the Los Angeles Rams to the Super Bowl in 2018. But once the Rams lost the Super Bowl, things started to unravel. First of all, Todd Gurley dealt with injuries. Secondly, the offense was figured out at that point. People knew how to stop Sean McVay's jet motion offense. And as a result, Jared Goff slightly regressed, but although Jared Goff wasn't necessarily the greatest quarterback, he statistically was able to put up around 3,800 to 4,000 passing yards, and he had a very high completion percentage, but many Jared Goff naysayers typically attribute that to him being a system quarterback. And this would culminate with Sean McVay ultimately dropping hints that things weren't going so well with Jared Goff. If you go back to the playoffs, the LA Rams were actually trying to play John Wolford over Jared Goff and just use Jared Goff's broken finger as some sort of excuse to get out of starting him. When John Wolford injured his neck, Jared Goff ended up coming in, and in the first round of the NFL playoffs against the Seattle Seahawks, he performed fairly well. But the Rams weren't ultimately good enough to beat the Green Bay Packers. Now, meanwhile, the Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford's situation is fairly straightforward. They drafted Matthew Stafford with the number 1 overall pick in the 2009 NFL draft, and they experienced a couple of years of success, but ultimately Stafford was only able to make it to 3 playoff games and never had any postseason success throughout his entire career. Well, it seems as though the LA Rams and the Detroit Lions decided to melt the internet today, and this is extremely consistent with our previous video. According to Adam Schefter, Detroit is dealing quarterback Matthew Stafford to the Los Angeles Rams in exchange for 2 future first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and quarterback Jared Goff. So this is pretty much the number one overall pick in the 2009 NFL draft and the number one overall pick in the 2016 NFL draft being traded for one another. I cannot tell you how amazed I am by this trade. I have stood in front of you guys multiple times and criticized the LA Rams for poor asset management. I always say that they're very frivolous with their assets, and in this one trade, they gave up the 2016 number one overall pick, which by the way looks to be pretty decent at his young age. For a 26-year-old so far, Jared Goff hasn't been remarkable, but he has been pretty good. And when you give up Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks in order to get Matthew Stafford in return, you're paying one heck of a hefty price tag if you're the LA Rams. It's really hard to comment on whether the Rams made a good move or not, because at face value, I'm going to go out and say that I feel like they gave up a significant amount of assets in order to get Matthew Stafford. So if I had to give the LA Rams a grade, it would be anything from a C- to a C. And that's because I don't know what McVay can now do with Matthew Stafford that he completely struggled to do with Jared Goff. And until I see what Sean McVay is able to pull off with Matthew Stafford, then it's really hard for me to grade this trade at face value for the LA Rams. But my initial impulse is saying that the Rams just gave up a ridiculous amount. Now, when you transition to the Detroit Lions, I think that this is by far the greatest way I have ever seen a team successfully move on from a franchise cornerstone. Matthew Stafford is the same age as Russell Wilson. He has played for the Detroit Lions for 12 seasons. Initially, I thought that the Detroit Lions were going to get maybe a second-round pick for him, maybe a second round and like 2 third-round picks for him, maybe 2 second-round picks or 1 first-round pick and 2 second-round picks at the very best. But I would have never imagined that the Detroit Lions were able to get 2 first-round picks and a former number 1 overall pick who could essentially be their bridge quarterback. For that, I want to give the Detroit Lions like an A++ because this is a great way to start your rebuild. Matthew Stafford is gone. You get a brand new young quarterback under center. I'm very interested to see how Jared Goff is going to perform for the Detroit Lions because he's also going to have a pretty nice running game to support him there. Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, should they decide to bring back Kenny Golladay, are pretty solid wide receivers. And this is a very intelligent move, in my opinion, on the behalf of the Detroit Lions. This is going to catalyze their rebuild by 2 to 3 years at the very most. As for the LA Rams, I'm really starting to wonder when all of this wheeling and dealing of first-round picks is going to come back to haunt them. Maybe they viewed this move as a vehicle to get out of Jared Goff's contract because Matthew Stafford has a pretty good contract, 2 years, $43 million left on that contract. But I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think? Who do you think won the trade? Do you think the Rams may have given up too much, or do you think they paid just the right amount? Maybe I neglected a specific point in this video. Let me know in the comment section down below because I'd like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.